Just want to say a few words about a lot of the drama surrounding the palace at the moment and the whole Meghan Harry saga. Um, Harry Meghan saga, depending how you see it, because some perceive that this is more Prince Harry pushing the rift with the palace than Meghan. Others feel that Meghan is a very assertive woman who had an agenda from the beginning. With these sort of things, it's always difficult to know when you're looking in as the public. Who can really know what's going on behind closed doors, the rich and famous? There's a certain perception that people take, and if you're in the public eye and you're a public figure, there is a certain degree I feel that you can control in terms of how the public perceive you, but there's also a lot that you can't control because the power of the press and the media is very, very strong in the 21st century. Um, it's no mystery that a lot of this it's no secret that a lot of this stems from the very real tensions between the Sussexes and the British press. But I still have a few sticking points in terms of how I'm looking at this. Now, the interview, this much talked about upcoming interview with Oprah Winfrey is supposedly going to be screened by ITV on Monday at 8 p.m. I will watch that, not because I'm interested in gossip, but because I think this could actually have implications for the monarchy as an institution. I think it could be quite explosive, and I admit that that's quite intriguing. Um, Not because I want there to be scandal, but because it'll be interesting to see what the response is. It will be interesting to see what angle they take. Now, I'm anticipating that they will very much portray themselves as victims. I think Harry will portray himself as a dutiful husband who is simply looking out for his family, and I think that would be very sympathetic. And I also think a big focus on mental health will resonate with a lot of people because it is something that has less stigma today, and people are generally a lot more sympathetic to than they would have been in the past. I've been watching The Crown on Netflix, and I must admit it's very gripping, very engaging. I'm up to the second series, and if you look at the life that Princess Margaret had, um, I think it's very tough being part of that institution in some ways, even more so than just being a regular celebrity like an actress or a singer or an actor. There is something unique about that institution, even among monarchies. The world has 44 monarchies today, or rather, there's 44 countries with a monarch as head of state, and Elizabeth II is about a quarter of those, literally 16 states she is head of. So the British royal family is a unique institution, and so that's why this is potentially such a big deal because I think if they get a balanced sort of approach and they give some ground to the palace and they give some respect to the Queen and to the institution, that will win a lot of support. But they balance it out by saying we feel we were treated unfairly for X, Y, and Z. But I think if they use this interview to sort of basically, the Duchess is talking about being smeared by the bullying allegations, and I'll come to that in a second. But I think if she was to come out and basically say Britain's a racist country, Um, I think that would be very tactless. It would be very unfair, and it would amount to a smear of this country. Now, I would like to think she's smarter than that, and she wouldn't make such a reckless and unfair claim. Because when they got married in July 2018, there was, or was it May 2018, summer 2018, there was significant public support. Now, publications like BuzzFeed have tried to weigh in on these allegations of racism and sexism by, for example, comparing the portrayal of the Duchess of Cambridge with the Duchess of Sussex. But I think that's more to do not with the ethnicity of the two women, but they're different personalities. I think Meghan Markle has more of this slightly rebellious streak that Diana had, or if rebellious is too strong a word, the independent streak. I think in some ways the Duchess of Cambridge is um, she's a modern woman, but she is also quite traditional, much more so than Meghan. So I think it's more to do with that. It's a different personality rather than anything racial. And you know, this constant notion of Meghan Markle being a minority woman, she's mixed race. Calling her black is kind of disregarding her white father. So she's a mixed race woman. But the idea that, you know, she was a victim of racism and sexism on a large scale, I think would be preposterous. I'm not going to say it was absolutely absent. And I, again, you know, I'm just a member of the public. I don't know what sort of things might have been happening behind closed doors. But regarding these bullying allegations, if there's any truth in those, that is definitely going to put a lot of question marks on the credibility of the Sussexes because they're going to use this interview unquestionably to really dress themselves up as the victims. Now, I'm not saying that isn't true, but you know, it would be a case of, well, that's a bit hypocritical. She's complaining of bad treatment, but she herself has been involved in bullying. Now, it has to be said, these are just allegations, but you know, she's saying it's a smear campaign because of the timing. It could be, we don't know, but I would also suggest that maybe those who felt that they were humiliated and degraded and bullied feel that now is the time to get their point of view across, to get, you know, a balance with someone who treated them badly and say, well, actually, she's portraying herself as the victim and she treated us pretty badly. Um, the thing is, these are not new allegations. They were apparently on official records that this has happened. I don't know how much weight there is to that, but I think bullying allegations should always be taken seriously, but it doesn't mean that the accused is definitely guilty. It's the same with the Home Secretary. You know, one could say it's a similar dynamic. Um, just because someone's accused of being a bully doesn't mean they are. But I do think that bullying allegations should be taken seriously. It could be a different managerial style. You know, that Americans are more blunt. Apparently, when she was working as an actress on the set of Suits, which I never watched, but you know, she was a good boss. I don't know what that means. If she was like helped to produce the series or something. I didn't really follow her life before royalty, but apparently she would buy all the cast members pizza and so on. You know, the whole Harry Meghan saga, it's sort of like a 21st century equivalent in some ways of, though certainly not the same, but I see some echoes, frankly, of Edward VIII from Wallace Simpson. Now, before people say I'm being literal with that, obviously there's big differences. Edward VIII was actually monarch, far higher ranking than Harry. Um, but you know, both were strong-willed American women, both controversial figures. I think the politics of Harry and Meghan is definitely a sticking point because woke ideology is by nature polarizing, and you know, let's be honest, they are pretty woke. And I think Harry much more so since he's been with Meghan. Um, it's hard to see the Harry today versus the Harry of 10 years ago when he was known as a bit of a lad. Um, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with changing personality or whatever, but I do think that she seems to have a very strong influence over him. Now, maybe that's just love, and that's fine, but one can't help but see some comparisons. I do think that she is a very ambitious woman, and frankly, I don't entirely trust her. Not because she's strong. That isn't the issue. The issue is some of the things that have transpired. I mean, it just seems a bit tacky to be doing this interview whilst his grandfather's in hospital. It just seems a bit sensationalist. And like I said in the previous video about the subject, there seems to be a lot of double standards at play here. I mean, they're saying we wanted to get out of Britain because of the behaviour of the press. Now, I'm no fan of the British tabloids. I know what Harry's driving at with that, but he cannot always use what happened to his mother as a way to deflect criticism, because sometimes that criticism might be valid. I mean, the behaviour of the press can be outrageous. I'm not going to deny that. And there's no doubt they've been under very, very real pressure, but it does seem a bit self-righteous to say, we want to be left alone by the press, but we want to use the press when it suits us. Now, as public figures, they should accept that they're not above criticism, or rather, they're not above any scrutiny. This idea that, you know, we want to use the press, but only when they're nice to us and only when it's favourable, it's propaganda, basically. Any other public figure, I mean, politicians can demand that the press give them favourable coverage, so why should royals? Um, that's an aspect of this that needs to be considered. We don't have an absolute monarchy. There's no lèse majesté in Britain. Even the Queen gets criticised, albeit not that often, but she does. So that's a bit of a sticking point for me. Is this idea that they're sending out mixed messages. We don't like the intrusion, but we are public figures and we want our causes to be promoted. You can't have it both ways. If you are a public figure, there's going to be scrutiny. There is going to be, um, that is going to happen. If it's excessive, yeah. I mean, I think some of the things between her and her father that was just felt a bit tacky, and I think her father definitely behaved a bit dubiously in that. But I don't know. I'm going to watch this interview. I'll make my own judgment. As it stands, my preconception is that it's going to be very much about self-pity. I hope they would have the sense and the diplomacy to make it somewhat balanced and say, well, we respect the institution, or, we respect the Queen, or make it balanced to some extent. The way this is being presented, the way it's being marketed is no hold bar. I mean, and Oprah Winfrey is very good at this. She's very good at sensationalizing things, which is why she's at the top of her business. That's her job. But there does seem to be a slightly tacky side to it. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to see what they have to say. But here's another problem. Oprah Winfrey is going to be just a friend. She's going to just ask them questions that they will be comfortable answering. This is not going to be a case of a tough journalist being assertive and saying, well, how do you explain this? How do you explain that? I think Oprah Winfrey is going to be very gentle with them, frankly. And I think she's going to play right into their hands. I'm not saying but I think it's because of the pre-arrangements that they will have. You know, because they will have chosen Oprah. That's the point. Anyway, I'll make another video after the interview. That's my preconceived notion, and I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But I think it's going to be 2 hours or whatever it is of the press were terrible, Meghan was a victim of racism and bullying, it's all terrible, feel sorry for us. And I think if they really want public sympathy, I think they need to be a bit more diplomatic than that. Um, but I'm not totally, like they're wrong and the palace is right, or they're wrong and, you know, I do have some sympathy with them, and I think whatever they raise needs to be considered. I just hope they don't smear the country, because I think what Lawrence Fox said on that Question Time episode was correct. The idea that Britain is a really intolerant country is a smear. It is. We have racism in this country, but I would argue that this country has come a very long way. So if Meghan is going to use this to, have a swipe at the United Kingdom, I don't think that will go down very well, understandably, in this country. We'll see what happens.